decks is he only has one Chain to the Rocks main. This allows his mana base to be better. He doesn't have to play like 9 mountains in his deck. He has to play more come into play tap lands and more temples. And he doesn't get blown out in this format as much as a lot of the Mardu decks are getting to be with main deck Reclamation Sages everywhere.
Yep, and it looks like Shane was on the play. He leads off with a mountain. Zach Reyburn begins things with Temple of Silence, scrying a card right to the top of his deck. Good start for him. Shane Merrill, Plains and Seeker of the Way.
Now that's actually these are the draws that Zach wants to see in this matchup. He wants to see him have Seeker of the Way and Goblin Rabblemaster because it matches up well with Lightning Strike.
Yep.
Like, let's say he were to raise the alarm here into Hordling Outburst, this Lightning Strike would not be a good card in his hand.
Zach Reyburn actually does have a Lightning Strike, and I think that we are going to see one taking down this Seeker of the Way. 2-mana spell, dealing with 2-mana creature. That's a trade that Zach is going to want to be taking all day, every day.
Smartly, he's going to do it in his main phase, too.
Yes, absolutely. Just in case Shane has a pump spell or something to be able to make his Seeker 4 toughness. Also in Zach's hand, you see a copy of Elspeth Sun's Champion. That is a one-of in his Mardu deck.
Right. It's along with like a couple Sarkins and a couple Rabblmasters to get the game over with.
Yep. He actually has a slightly lower number of Planeswalkers. He only has 1 Elspeth, 2 Sarkon the Dragon Speaker, and 2 Sorin, Solemn Visitor, as his Planeswalkers. Typically, we see these Mardu decks have 7, 8, maybe even 9 Planeswalkers. He's only got 5.
It depends on how controlling they want to be. He does have the full complement of Butcher of the Horde. This is the flex spot that's been coming up a little bit in Mardu. Some people talked about taking it out or not, because some of them are starting to cut some of their Hordling Outbursts, and that makes that card worse when you don't have it.
Hordling Outburst, putting into play 3 Garrett Post Goblins on Shane's turn 3. Pretty good follow-up. Pretty good for Zach that he was able to get rid of that Seeker of the Way. This would have been quite the potent start from Shane Merrill, had that card still stayed in play. Still a pretty good start, as Zach plays Nomad Monastery as his 3rd land.
Right. Zach doesn't have many clean answers in his deck to a Hordling Outburst. He, however, does have Hordling Outburst of his own. That's a Goblin Rabblemaster.
Yep, and that is the promotional M15 box. I think that's the Buy a Box promo Goblin Rabblemaster. And Shane Merrill's going to be able to get in for 4 damage, taking Zach down to 15. 1 damage from his fetch lands and 4 from 1/1 goblins.
If Zach doesn't have an answer to this Goblin Rabblemaster this turn, this game is going to end very quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. It looks like he's got a lot of lands in his hand there. I see 3 there on the right side of his hand, including 2 mountains, and a Rabblemaster of his own. Rabblemaster on the defense, theoretically able to answer a Rabblemaster on the offense. Not the best answer that I can think of.
Well, Shane will probably have a way to be able to push through a Goblin Rabblemaster. If he does, we'll be reaching for sideboards very, very soon.
Yep. Among the cards that he can use to take out Rabblmasters, he does himself have 3 copies of Lightning Strike, as well as 4 Stoke the Flames, as well as a Magma Jet and a Chandra to prevent it from blocking.
Yeah, I believe that Zach has a copy of Murder's Cut in his hand, which is going to happen here before before combat. To be able to take out Goblin Rabblemaster or not take, what would it be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He'd be a 8/2 this turn.
And there's another Rabblemaster appear.
This draw from Shane has been very good this game.
Yep, absolutely. Creature, followed by Rabblemaster, followed by Rabblemaster. After Hordling Outburst, crazy. So we have another Rabblemaster after the first one died.
Thank you very much.
I think that he's just deciding that he wants to keep the Buy a Box promo one in play, but Zach's like, no, that's the one I killed. So we're going to take that one out of play.
I'll kill the foil one.
That's the one I targeted, sir. You played it first. It's your own darn fault. So we're going to attack with 3, it looks like 4 Goblin tokens.
Well, I think what happened here is I think Shane may have missed his trigger from his Goblin Rabblemaster to the second one. So I think only the 4 tokens are attacking. That was a second Rabblemaster was played, right? It is below the screen.
4 more damage. Zach Reyburn goes down to 11 life.
Yes, it was a second. It's actually another promo.
It is another promo. So. And Zach top decks a halfway decent answer to some of the tokens in his own Hordling Outburst. Shane does not have a ton of great ways to clear opposing lots of tokens if Zach plays out a lot of Hordling Outburst tokens himself.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, how I like Arc Lightning a lot in this format. I mean, it's not great against the Constellation decks, but in these matchups, it really does shine.
It's certainly no barrage of boulders.
Oh, God.
With
you with that card.
That card's great. So Zach is going to have to try to dig himself out of this hole. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Although if he plays out a Hordling Outburst and is able to survive after untapping, he might be able to play a Butcher of the Horde, maybe perhaps giving a lifelink on the defense, which would be a good way to recover.
Yeah, I think he's going to play a Hordling Outburst here, hoping to keep back the the Goblin Rabble Master on the other side, he's probably going to trade off with some of the tokens. I'm pretty sure that he has a Sorin Solemn Visitor in his hand, so it's actually a pretty good follow-up to this. Is that a raise the alarm at the end of the turn? Yeah,
Looks
raise
like.
the alarm. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to block here, so we're not gonna be able to use our Sorin Solemn Visitor on an offensive aspect here. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to trade some of our tokens off here and hope to God we can find an answer for this actual Rabble Master.
Yeah.
When they're left on the board for 3 or 4 turns unchecked, they can just run away with the game.
Absolutely. And the Rabble enters the red zone. That's 4 Goblin tokens, 2 Soldiers, and a Goblin Rabble Master. That Rabble Master is a 6/2.
Yeah. I'm sure Zach is aware that you're supposed to trade off with actual Goblin tokens here. The Soldier tokens don't matter, but Goblin tokens actually have an effect in the match because of Goblin Rabble Master's second ability of getting +1/+0 every time it attacks, counting other goblins.
Yep, absolutely. So it's a 6/2 Goblin Rabble Master coming into the red zone here. We'll see how many of the goblins Zach elects to block with. He's going to put 2 goblins in front of the Rabble Master and 1 in front of another goblin.
Yeah, I like this attack from Shane. If he has a trick, it's insane. And Zach's already dead. If not, he has to trade off 2 tokens for the Rabble Master and another token for one of his tokens, leaving him with 5. But it gets Zach down to 6. So Zach's still in just a terrible spot, even if all these trades happen.
Yep, and the trades do happen. Shane remains with 5 1/1s on the battlefield. He has 2 cards left in his hand, one of which appears to be a Seeker of the Way, and he passes the turn. So Zach is a little bit happy with that. He's not unhappy, certainly, that his Seeker of the Way was the play.
Right, Zach drew one of his own for the turn, so if he has any spell to be able to block and, kill a creature, giving his Seeker lifelink, we actually can maybe claw back into this game.
Well, I'll tell you what, land number 6 means that Elspeth the Sun's Champion is also an option.
Right, you might be able to Seeker of the Way plus Sorin here, or you might just Elspeth and make 3 tokens. He's doing some quick math to see how dead he is.
Yeah. He's only at 6. Jeskai Tokens has a lot of ways to finish off the game. 2 Jeskai Charms, 3 Lightning Strikes, 4 Stoke the Flames, and a Magma Jet. That's 10 full burn spells. Looks like he's elected to go with Seeker of the Way and a Goblin Rabble Master of his own. Goblin enters the red zone, blocked by the Seeker of the Way, and pass the turn back. Zach at 6, facing 6 attacking creatures.
Yeah, Shane actually top deck a Stoke the Flames here that's going to end the game no matter how Zach blocks.
Looks like Seeker is going to stand in front of a Goblin, as will Rabble Master, and Stoke the Flames means that is going to be the end of Game 1, and we're going to see Shane Merrill go up 1 game to 0. Jeskai Tokens over Mardu mid-range in the hands of Zach Reyburn. So while those players sideboard for Game 2, let's talk about the choice that these 2 players have made playing these decks that they have chosen. Welcome back to the booth. Reuben Bresler is alongside Tannon Grace here at CardMageddon. Jeskai Tokens, we haven't seen much of this weekend, and it was one of the more impressive decks from Worlds Week in the hands of Yuya Watanabe. Why do you think that the players have elected to stay away from the blue-white-red token style?
One word, hate. There is a lot of main deck hate in this format. A lot of Doomwake Giants going around, a lot of Drown in Sorrows, things like that. Your pure token strategies aren't the best way to get through the amount of Abzan and Constellation decks that we've seen, especially here this weekend. They've shown up in full force this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's another reason why we haven't seen the Sam Black style red-white token stack, is that one is also another strategy that puts a lot of tokens into play, but with a lot of main deck Doomwake Giants, it's a little bit of a problem. Meanwhile, Mardu Midrange was a popular deck, especially a month and a half ago, taking a lot of top 8 spots in Open Series events and Grand Prix. Yet, it was not played very heavily at Worlds. It has not been played very heavily on the PPTQ scene yet. Why is Zach having such success with the Mardu mid-range deck?
Well, the format started to shift towards these token decks, and as we saw this game, it's not a very good matchup for the Mardu deck. And then sometimes they have a problem with these Constellation decks just going bigger than them every turn. So when that happens, you see Mardu take a step back, and that's what I was talking about yesterday. The blue-white heroic might take a step forward since that was its worst matchup. But since these decks with Doomwake Giants are becoming so popular, they're starting to push the token deck a little bit towards the side, and it's making that niche again for Mardu. And as we see a different form of his deck taking advantage of these Constellation decks that are coming into play. He's got these Erases main deck. He's got this Wingmate Rock we were talking about is very good against these decks. Things like that. So you might start seeing it hedging again. The format changes every couple weeks. It's really dynamic. When a deck becomes popular, it pushes one out and creates space for another one.
So we've seen a lot of Abzan Whip this weekend.
Right.
We've seen Blue-Black Control taking advantage of that. That might be one of the decks of the weekend as well. We know that there's a Blue-White Heroic deck in the hands of John Kohler that's near the top tables. Seeing that metagame develop where it's heading more towards big creatures as opposed to lots of creatures, do you think that is the deck that gets the most advantage from that shift in the metagame is Mardu?
I don't think it's Mardu. I think it's specifically Blue-Black Control. And I think we saw Jim Davis do really well this weekend at the Invitational Blue-White Control. That deck can actually be pretty good right now in the format too. But I think when you start to see a shift of one or two decks take the top spot in the format, a control deck really starts to sneak in. Again, if they keep having all these decks to beat each other and beat the token decks, then maybe Mono Red can sneak in. If it can find a way to deal with a whip. That's the only problem is if they have board presence plus a whip, it's almost impossible for a mono red deck to win. But if you can dodge it for that one critical turn, or just have some way to interact with it for that one critical turn, you're going to win the game.
Yep, absolutely. I think that Magic is a game where sets come out every 3 months, and the standard metagame during those 3 months is it isn't always the same, but it's somewhat predictable. The first month, people don't really know what's going on.
Right.
People are playing everything. They find cards they like and they jam them together and they hope the deck works. From that, you get your first initial metagame. You have a level 0 and you have a level 1.
Right.
You have a couple of aggro decks, you have a couple of mid-range decks. You don't really have a control deck yet because most people don't know what to aim for.
Right.
So your control decks don't know exactly which answers they need to play because everyone's playing so many different types of questions. Month 2, you see a metagame develop. You have an enemy number 1, you have an enemy number 2 and 3. You see some sort of control decks start to develop, pick up a little bit of answers, and you see the mid-range decks consolidate and figure out what they need to be doing and fighting on different axes. The later the metagame goes, though, the more the control decks are able to hone in on exactly what's important. And that's when the weird aggro decks come out. That's when the different angle of aggro decks start to come out. You'll remember in various metagames past that during that last month before new sets came out, weird aggro decks like Bant Hexproof or Pedal to the Metal were decks that came out of nowhere to take advantage of these already pre-established metagames. And so it's an interesting shift that you see take place every couple of weeks. And so we'll cut back down to the match here and see how these guys are able to take advantage of the shifts in the metagame recently with their Jeskai tokens and Mardu mid-range decks.
Zach has a couple cards in sideboard that are going to be pretty good in this matchup. He has three Anger of the Gods, a Chandra Pyromaster, another copy of Elspeth, and In Hostilities. He has some Read the Bones, some Thoughtseizes, and Utterance. I don't think those are necessarily going to come in. There's a chance Read the Bones might if he's specifically looking for cards, but it's not really good against decks that have a lot of burn spells. I more expect him to see like Anger of the Gods, Chandra, and Elspeth to come in his deck from here.
Both players begin with Seeker of the Way in play, with Zach on the play, by the way. And it looks like Shane's sideboard includes 2 copies of Glare of Heresy, which are quite good against Elspeth's and Butcher of the Horde, not to mention Seeker of the Way, as well as 2 Erases, and Elspeth's Son's Champion, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 End Hostilities, 3 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Magma Jets, and an Arc Lightning. So these players have very similar answers in their sideboard, both able to pick up Anger of the Gods and End Hostilities, depending on which one of them wants to try to take on the control role. So it should be interesting to see who decides they want to be the beatdown.
I think Zach has to default into the control deck in every aspect of this matchup. It's going to be really hard for him to beat down the Jeskai Tokens deck without a really good draw involving Butcher of the Horde, like while he's interacting with Shane's board. But it's kind of a pipe dream. It's not really how the games work out when you map it up.
I'll tell you what, though. Zach played a Nomad Monastery for his turn 3, and Shane has a pretty good start. Turn 2, Seeker of the Way. Turn 3, Hordling Outburst. But Zach has one of those sideboarded Anger of the Gods in his hand if he decides that that's the direction that he wants to go. And so I think that he's going to be able to basically 2 for 2, trading an Anger of the Gods and a Seeker of the Way for a Hordling Outburst and a Seeker of the Way, if that's the direction he wants to go. He also has another Seeker of the Way in his hand, and also an Utter End.
This is a really funny matchup. Shane actually has a copy of Anger of the Gods in his hand, too.
Oh my. Both players with control cards in their hand.
So this is going to be a really funny game to play out when both of them are casting Hordling Outburst, both are casting 2/2s for 2, but they both have Anger of the Gods in their hand.
If we can get, if Zach chooses to play the Anger of the Gods, I'd like to see Shane's facial reaction to the Anger of the Gods being played. So maybe we can get a copy of the face cams here. Oh, nope, it's just going to be the Seeker of the Way number 2. So Zach is actually going to hold off on playing a spell instead. I apologize for cutting away to the players here while they take a look at the life totals. It's just going to be 2 copies of Seeker of the Way. And there is a Jeskai Ascendancy for Shane Merrill. All of the tokens coming in. Oh, they're just going to be Stoke the Flames off of his 4 creatures, taking down a Seeker of the Way.
Now this is essentially a free Stoke the Flames, since the trigger from Jeskai Ascendancy is going to allow him to untap the creatures that he used to convoke the Stoke the Flames out. This is like actually one of the best plays the Jeskai deck can do, and it actually just feels like cheating most of the time when you're doing it.
It's a free 4 damage, free kill spell. And that Seeker of the Way is now a 3/3 lifelinker, and all those tokens are 2/2s, so this is 9 damage coming into Zach Reyburn.
This isn't the start that Zach wanted in either one of these games. As I said, this is one of the matchups he doesn't necessarily want, so this is one of the harder ones. Though this Anger of the Gods that he slow rolled is going to be pretty good this turn. If he has a second spell to cast in the turn, he can cast the spell, then cast Anger of the Gods. His Seeker of the Way will live through his own Anger of the Gods and be able to attack for a lot of damage and some lifelink back to recoup some of the damage that he just took this turn.
For example, if he has Erase.
Erase, yes. That would be the best draw for him here, is to untap, erase the Jeskai Ascendancy, and then cast Anger of the Gods.
Yep, he also has access to Glare of Heresies in his sideboard as well, so I believe. Certainly Erase, though, I think is the best option. He also has 3 copies of Thoughtseize. That would be another way to trigger the Seeker of the Way and save it. Doesn't look like he has them, though. I'm not sure. I think he's just going to Anger the Gods here after he pokes in for the free 2 damage.
I think Zach is thinking about actually just blocking here and soaking up some of the damage.
Yep, he's decided that he doesn't have that second spell, so he's rather gain 2 life on the defense, taking down one of the soldier or one of the goblin tokens.
Yeah, if you're going to cast Anger of the Gods next turn, I don't mind this. It's interesting to see if he's going to cast Anger of the Gods or not, because he would have blocked the bigger power of the creature with more power this turn, which would have been Seeker of the Way. But he might have a different play in mind. Since he has I know he has a Murder's Cut in his hand. Maybe trying to get more value out of his Anger of the Gods, just waiting for another token generator.
Nope, looks like he's just going to go with Anger of the Gods.
Okay, so he is just going to go with Anger of the Gods, okay.
And there go all of the creatures.
Yeah, that Seeker of the Way should be exiled. There we go.
Perfect. Just in case any future delve spells like Treasure Cruise come into play. Shane untaps, still with 3 lands, so we know his hand is all spells.
Yeah. This is kind of where you want to be with the Jeskai Ascendancy deck, though. All right, so we have another token generator here.
And he's going to get to Loot, which is draw a card and discard a card off of Jeskai Ascendancy. Jeskai Ascendancy is one of those cards, whenever a card comes out that has a ton of words on it, you just have to think that it's going to have an impact on the metagame. I remember when Huntmaster of the Fells first came out, and everyone was like, it's just kind of incremental value, and I'm like, no, this has so many words on it, it has to be good.
Right. It's actually the opposite of what was Magic at the beginning. Almost every card in the beginning of Magic that, the text had to be smaller to fit in the text box, they were almost all unplayable. Yeah. Nowadays, when you have cards with that much text on them, they're have to be good.
They're there for a reason.
Yeah, they have to be good.
And so we see a Hordling Outburst from Shane Merrill, quite potent with the Jeskai Ascendancy that is already in play. Zach is down to 8, remember? And so any non-creature spells are going to pump the team. Zach down to 7, actually, because of a fetch land. So we'll see how Zach is able to answer the new Hordling Outburst that has made an appearance. Again, I think that Hordling Outburst is one of the best spells in Standard.
Alright, so we see Zach here having to Murderous Cut a token, because with 3 tokens in play, any spell is lethal next turn. So Zach is just trying to control the board, give himself as many top decks as he can, and try to get out of this. He actually drew Sorin Solemn Visitor this turn, which isn't terrible. He'll be able to make a 2/2 token that can block, hopefully, one of the other tokens on this other side of the board and keep his Sorin alive. But he has to know that Shane's hand is full of spells at this point, and that he's solely very farly behind.
Yeah. So here comes a 2/2 Vampire token with flying up against a Jeskai Ascendancy and 2 Goblin tokens that would be able to make them 2/2.